Welcome back to New Perspectives. I'm Harvey, Elwood, your host. This afternoon, I am with Mr. Henry Dyson, an outstanding educator, individual with a great background and knowledge and skill, and I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
I'd like to say Professor Dyson.
Okay, thank you very much.
We know that you've done work in a variety of areas. Of course, you're Mr. Dyson, but in my estimation, you are a professor extraordinaire.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
We're talking about a book that you've just recently written called The Big Gray House. And, why don't you give us some background on how you came about this important project that you've put together?
Okay. The Big Gray House is a house that actually existed in Sumter, South Carolina. And that is, in fact, the house that I grew up in.
Okay.
And thinking back over my childhood, which I thought was a good one, I started to remember some of the activities we did, some of the experiences we had, some of the things that we learned. And I thought it would be a good idea to put some of these things down and just express them to people who may not have experienced those things, and especially to children. And what I wanted to do is to tap into the imaginary mind of a child, because a lot of this first book deals with play and creative play and things like that. So the idea of the book is to get children to read, but also to get them to be creative in their thinking.
Okay.
Play converts into learning, learning converts into experiences and habits and so forth. So it's a combination of things.
Okay. So basically, a lot of what you've written about, of course, it's a children's book, and I did read most of it, because you've written two books, in fact.
Yes.
But we'll focus on the first one as we continue with the conversation. And a lot of this, you say, is from your own childhood experiences. And you felt that by writing this, you would be able to entertain or engage the minds of young people, and somehow they would not only relive some of what you had experienced, as well as having some creativity or some of those creative things that you participate in as a young man.
Yeah, I want to get children reading, and sometimes I think they engage with stories. And they can identify with characters.
Well, tell us about some of the characters in your book.
Okay. Well, the characters in the book have a name that's different from my name.
Sure.
Intentionally, sort of to protect the innocent or the guilty, as the case may be.
All right.
But they have different character names. The main character is Franklin Myers. He is an inquisitive, active boy who liked to play, liked to learn, and had a good time with his family. And so by seeing things through the eyes of Franklin, we get to see how he learned to work, how he learned to play, how he got along with his families, his cousins. It talks about school and life on the farm, because they grew up on a farm. And that was the experience that he had growing up, and that helped to mold him into the man that he ultimately would become.
Now, I know that your background, that you're from New Jersey at some point, originally from Sumter.
Right.
And then you transferred, or you went up to New Jersey, and you lived there for a long time. Right. You had young cousins, I would imagine, and during that time, did a lot of them travel back to the South and have those same farm experiences that you had? And if they did, what would you say about that, for Northerners coming to the South?
Well, one of the things that I have thought is that I think every child ought to spend at least a summer on a farm.
Okay. Okay.
That's just one of the things that I've thought of. When I go around, I talk to children right now and I ask them, where does milk come from? They said the supermarket. So So I mean, there's even though they're smart, they just don't have the knowledge to make that transition all the way back to the source.
Sure.
So I think that spending some time on a farm would be fun. But with us growing up on the farm, and you know, we just learned things because we had to do things.
Right. Exposure.
And exactly. And in fact, quite honestly, you know, as a child, some of those things we didn't necessarily want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the wisdom now of our parents was that you have to do this because you need to know how to do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you're going to learn it is for you to do it. And you'll do it because I say you have to do it. I'm your parents, and I know you're going to need it later on.
Sure.
So those kinds of
life skills, I guess.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the other thing is, my parents, of course, were less educated than I am.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Less formal education, but they had a lot of good common sense, and the living on the farm gave them an opportunity to display all of that and to teach us lots of things in the process of growing up.
You know, one of the things that drew me into your work and what you prepared was we have similar experiences. And I draw on my own experiences as a youth, traveling here, traveling back and forth between South Carolina and New York. My uncle, as you just talked about, you know, the older people who had so much knowledge. My uncle in March will be 90. Okay. He's more of a dad to me. His name is R.J. Harley. And I'll tell you something, Professor Dyson. I've learned more from him. And I may have acquired a little more information or another depth of information. But realistically, he's wiser and smarter than I could ever be. And I don't care how many degrees I'll get, whatever, because what he has is irreplaceable. So yes. I see where this book is going, and I applaud you for writing it.
And in fact, every book that I write is going to be dedicated to some people, but two people, they will always be dedicated to two people, and those are my parents, Henry and Janie Dyson.
That's what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking with Professor Henry Dyson, originally from Sumter, South Carolina. He's live in our studios right now here at WSSB 90.3 FM. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back in a few moments and talk some more about your book, Professor Dyson.
Okay.
Hi, this is Harvey, Elwood, New Perspectives, and I'm back with the author of The Big Gray House, Brother Henry Dyson. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I've been looking here at, I wanted to ask a question about Franklin. He's the main character in your book. Yes. And we talked, before we went to a break, about how young people of today, comparing to young people of yesteryear, their growing up experiences, northern, southern, that kind of thing. And in your book, I wanted to know, how does Franklin's neighborhood compare to those children who are growing up today? I mean, you know.
Well, Franklin grew up in a community, and I put it like that because that's in the country, of course, and so the houses are quarter mile apart in some cases. Okay. So it's the community. Now, in that community, you have different families. In our communities, some of us also happen to be relatives.
Okay.
But the children, you know, played together. The parents worked together. On the farm, they did projects together. If one farmer is in the community is harvesting peanuts this week, well, then everybody in the community converged on that his farm and helped him.
Right.
And then they moved to the next farm until the whole community was done.
Would you say that the disconnect in the life of young people today, a portion of that disconnect is them not knowing the history of where we came from or where people came from? In other words, what I'm asking is, in the Jewish community, it's almost a given that you have to have a tie or an understanding of the historical overview of where people have come from generationally, going back all the way 6,000 years back to Moses' time, if you see what I'm saying.
Right.
And does your book try to help bring some of that disconnect together for African American people in some way?
I think so. You see, talking about the members of the family, members of the various families working together, it's also a factor of the authority in the community.
Right.
For example, the parents were parents sort of all the children in the community.
And a parent, any parent can smack a child.
Yes.
But today, you better not put your hand on somebody else's child because they're going to be coming after you.
Exactly. And I think that does a disservice to the children.
Okay.
Because in our community, the adults were the authority figure, and the adults communicated with each other.
Right.
Now, if my aunt happened
that was the village raising the child.
Yes. If my aunt happened to discipline me, I knew I would better heed that discipline, and the aunt would also talk to my mother later on.
And you get two whippings.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, very possibly.
One thing I wanted to ask you about your book, race. Now, I knew that Sumter, South Carolina, they obviously they weren't just black people living farm life, but they had to be white people. I noticed you didn't mention race in the book, in either of your books. Why is that?
Well, I did that for a specific reason. I wanted it because I'm dealing with children, and the age group designed for is like 6 to 10.
Okay.
And what I wanted to show was a basic family. Now, this family is typical of many families that I knew.
White or black.
Exactly.
Okay.
Growing up in this period of time. In fact, I've spoken to many people, many white, who say, I grew up in a house just like that.
Okay.
Or I had similar kind of experiences. Okay. But what I'm trying to show is a family that worked together, that was strong, that was productive. Okay. Now, sure, there were problems outside of the family with race and all of that stuff.
Right.
You can't deny that.
But you were focusing in on the specifics of what family life was like, and it wasn't based on the external confusion that may have gone on at the time.
Exactly. Okay. And then you see the other thing is that if the family work very well together, even though there are problems on the outside with race and so forth, that family helped to secure the children and the family members so that when they had to go outside to deal with some of those other things, they were more secured in their own perspective and feeling.
Identity.
Exactly.
Okay. Your book is out on the market. I know that. How's it been received in your hometown?
Very well. Last February, I was invited by the local county library to be their speaker for the Black History program.
Okay.
This coming February, I've been invited back to my local church.
Yeah, I've got a long list of events that you've got here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Henry Dyson. He is the author of The Big Gray House. And I can see here that you've been invited back to the Sumter County Library, the main branch, Saturday, January 21st, 2012. You're also expected Saturday, November the 4th, at Barnes & Noble's on Forest Drive in Columbia.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be invited to Sumter. They have what they call a local authors fair.
Okay.
And a lot of people submitted applications to be a part, and they selected me. I'm pleased that they did.
Okay.
So I will be there, and so I'll have a chance to speak to some of my high school teachers, some of my classmates, some of my fellow students over at Benedict who live in the area and so forth.
And that's impressive, Professor. And I'll tell you why. It's impressive to me because your life's experiences are culminated to some degree, or at least in part, in this book. We hope that it serves as an inspiration for other people, that they too will begin to create journals, transpose their thoughts and ideas and their experiences likewise, as you've done. I also know, and I want to tell my listening audience about your travels. You have traveled extensively, a lot to Africa. I know you've been to Gabon, which is a place that I visited while I was a student. You've been to Equatorial Guinea, which is in West Africa. Tell us about your travels overseas and how